Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Law and Order. On behalf of the program and the production crew, ChannelEye and Rupavahini Corporation, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish all Sri Lankans out there and everyone watching the program a Happy New Year. We're going to talk about something very important going into 2021. We have had a really tough 2020. Everyone's gone through tough periods of probably months and months of really tough times. We have had lockdowns and curfew and all of that we have come through. Hopefully 2021 is going to be much better than what we anticipated it to be. And looking at that and looking at how the country could prosper and go forward, we're going to talk about something very important, very timely in fact, which is intellectual property law. So to do so with me today on the show, we have Dr. Nishantha Sampath Puncheva, Senior Lecturer at Department of Commercial Law, Faculty of Law, University of Colombo. A very good evening to you, Doctor.
Very good evening.
Doctor, to start off with, I'd like to first say a Happy New Year to you as well. And talking about intellectual property law in Sri Lanka, how do we describe that?
Hashan, it is something that we should talk about because we are into a new year, and so I think the most important topic that we should speak in this year is the promotion of innovation and intellectual property rights, because the world has felt this importance of intellectual property than this time than in the history, because we have faced in the 2020 much of the challenges that you mentioned. And intellectual property is the oil of the 21st century. And why don't we speak about this more and more is a question that I have.
And Doctor, if I may ask, what is the impact of intellectual property law in Sri Lanka? Because I don't think a lot of people understand what it really means and how to go about it. Because I think just like you mentioned, the COVID-19 pandemic has created avenues for lots and lots of new businesses to be developed in 2020, and 2021 is definitely going to be the same. So how do we get to the general masses about this whole thing?
Yes, the concept of intellectual property protects the finest creations of human mind. That is to say that if someone creates new thing or innovates something new in response to a need in the society, that person should get a property right, intangible property right. That property is called intellectual property. Like any other property, it is a property, but it is an intangible property, because creativity go into the production of the particular property, but until it is fixed. Now, I have an idea to write a book. The idea I have in mind, but when it is put into a book, it will become tangible property right that can be commercialized, that can be marketed, that can be seen by the others. So that is the concept of intellectual property, and the concept of intellectual property is the most important property. Intangible assets are the most important property in the 21st century, because now this century is driven by human mind, innovation. We are moving from technology-based industries towards innovation-based industries. So the importance of intellectual property, intangible assets, have become even more important in today's context.
Absolutely true. If you look at mobile phones, the evaluation over the last 3 decades or so, from Ericsson's to Nokia's to Samsung, and now you have iPhones that has taken the world by storm, and things have changed quite a bit. Talking about intellectual properties, there are many facets to it. If you could tell the audience as to what they are and how we go about it.
Yes, I think the concept of intellectual property has been there from 19th century, even before the industrial revolution. We have the concept of intellectual property, but the concept of intellectual property brought into Sri Lanka during British time and in the 19th century. However, the modern concept of intellectual property was brought to Sri Lanka by international treaties, and Sri Lanka has introduced the Intellectual Property Act of 2003. Before that, we had 1979 Code of Intellectual Property. Today, the intellectual property has been a statutory right in Sri Lanka by virtue of the Intellectual Property Act of 2003.
And if you break it down into what we see these days, talk about patenting, you have copyrights, you have trademarks, then you have trade secrets, then you go into geographical indicators and all of that. So what's most important if you really look at it?
Eshan, it's a very important question, because there are different types of intellectual property. Basically, intellectual property, the concept is divided into two main branches. One is copyright, the other is industrial property. Copyright protects the creation of the authors. For example, a writer of a book is the creative spark went into the creation of book will be protected by copyright, will be rewarded by copyright. And other category of right is called industrial property. Industrial property can be subdivided, as you mentioned, that it is a basket of rights. You have different tools. It's a basket of different IP tools. You have patents. In the US, it's called patents. You have patents. You have industrial designs. You have trademarks. You have geographical indications. Ceylon tea, Ceylon cinnamon, and then you have trade secrets. Coca-Cola, Siddhalepa. We have many brands in Sri Lanka, no? And then these trade secret, unfair competition, geographical indications, industrial designs are all taken as industrial property. The branch categorized as copyright is subdivided into author's rights and neighboring rights. For example, if you take a song, the composer owns copyright, author's right, but singer or the person who dances, or Rupavahini TV station broadcast will get neighboring rights. The neighboring rights is the rights neighboring on copyright, because copyright owner will get the highest rights. Neighboring rights will be given because the contribution of the institution or the artist to bring that copyrighted work into the public. So that is the concept of copyright and neighboring right. And now, as you mentioned, in the domain of industrial property, we have many rights. As I mentioned, patents, number one, because patents protects innovation, right? Then industrial design. You have new look and feel element of a product, new business entity. It's like new Apple stores. The look and feel element. If you have new mobile phone, if it is a new look, then it is protected by the outer appearance of the product is protected by the design. Now you have, we take tea bags. You have a new packaging of tea, Ceylon tea. So that if you have a new design in that can be protected by industrial design. You have new piece of furniture, that can be protected by industrial design. That is, look and feel element of the product will be protected by design rights. So you have trademarks. Every business has a name. Like I have my name, so every business, it is the face of the that will tell the consumer the name of the business. That is called trademark. And then you have geographical indications. Product link to the place. Ceylon tea. We are proud of Ceylon tea. So Ceylon tea is a geographical indication. The product originates in a special locality or place. Because of its origin, the product derives its unique taste, unique reputation, unique qualities. You take Malwana rambutan. Why this Malwana rambutan acquired acquire the unique taste. It acquires unique taste because of the flood, the soil in the flood plain of Kalani River, and the temperature, and also the climatic and other environmental factors. It has given unique taste. So it is, and if you take Ruhuna curd emanating from Ruhuna region, it is unique. Traditional method of milking, traditional method of preparation, and on clay pots. So it has unique taste. So if the product is linked to the place, that product is called geographical indication. And then if there is a process that you don't want to tell the world, it's a secret, top secret. For example, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola company has protected its secret for more than 150 years. Why? Keeping the information, recipe secret. So does KFC. And in Sri Lanka, many businesses have generation-old secrets kept, and they are property rights. It is trade secret is a property right, and so trade secret is another aspect of intellectual property. What about then? We also have trademarks. We discussed trademark, trade secrets, and then geographical indications and protection against unfair competition. If a business engages in a competitive dishonest practices, attacking the reputation of one enterprise, that particular type of right is called intellectual property aspect is called protection against unfair competition. So there are a number of IP tools that any business leader, any business establishment, irrespective of big or small, medium, whatever, will have to become familiar with the concept of intellectual property, and any business ownership should know what are the IP tools, intellectual property tools that you can use to extract value, add value from their products, right? From products emanating from your business. So you can use different IP tools, and as a nation, at the moment, innovation is a national priority, and we know why it is important, because without no country in the world in the 21st century would not be able to go proceed or rise in this competitive world without the concept of intellectual property. Without protecting intellectual property, no nation would be able to achieve its targets. Now just take the example, countries like South Korea. Incredible development has been achieved. You know, it's called miracle on the Han River. And South Korea was a backward nation country in 1970s. Japan in the early 20th century, very basic industries that the country had. See the development that these countries have achieved. Now even in Singapore, it's a country that we can see, look around and learn lessons. We can inspire from the country should look for the lessons emanating from these nations. No? So these countries are the countries where intellectual property rights, innovations given the utmost priority in the national policy paradigm.
Absolutely. And Doctor, you mentioned about patenting and copyrights in particular. One thing that in Sri Lanka, a lot of people, especially musicians, artists, lyricists and composers have had over the years, I think probably 30 to 50 years or so, how to protect themselves from what really happens in pirating world. So how do they go about this? Because I think Sri Lanka very much just about getting there. I think it's only in the last 4 to 5 years that we have seen some artists actually wanting to make sure that their songs are properly protected and all of that. So how do they go about this?
Very pertinent question. Why I would say that this issue has also been subject matter in court cases. The protection of songs and also artwork, the creative work of different authors. So it is, I think, the country should, in the first place, respect the creativity. And this country, even though we have provisions in the IP Act to protect creative work, what we lack at the moment is that we don't have a proper mechanism to protect. I would say that we don't have collective management societies. Now, you talk about artists. Now, for example, if an artist creates a song, so he should be able to exploit, commercially exploit that work for economic benefits, because unlike in the past, the reality is that we are living in a commercialized world. And now, if you develop a song, if you compose a song, you should get your rights, and you get somebody to sing this song, and then that person should be given neighboring rights, related rights, and these rights should be exploited in terms of financial gains. Why? Otherwise, you will not be able to lead your life, because you are a creator, and creator should be rewarded because this society, our commercialized world, would not otherwise make it possible for you to exploit your work. So that is why intellectual property, the copyright, accords you exclusive rights over on your over your created work. So it is the country should have in the first place the society should understand that we need to reward them, and society should have inculcate the habit of respecting intellectual property rights. For example, software industry. Now only software industry is thinking of ownership, copyright ownership, which was not there before. So we need to look at how copyright industry can benefit the country. So coming to your question very particularly, that the artists of this country should deserve a better life, and they should be able to extract value for their artistic work. So I think if I do not answer, I can further elaborate on this, enlighten the listeners that the importance of copyright, and copyright can reward artists, and it is guaranteed in the IP Act. Nevertheless, we have some procedural issues in this country. That is, we don't have a robust, very comprehensive collective management societies in this country, because individual artists, even though we have provisions in the Act, individual artists might not be able to monitor the frequent use of the IP rights by different multimedia platforms, right? And then they, at the end of the day, they would not get anything out of it. So that is the sad state that most of the artists are complaining, and because of the advancement of the technology, the artist, the works of artists are also exploited by different platforms. Now, you only wanted this your song, whatever we take for an example, you wanted your song to be exploited by way of a cassette, but it will be also exploited by YouTube and other means, which means that you would not get the due that you are entitled to claim. So I think that culture and also sophisticated technologies would make it quite difficult. Adding to that is that you need to think of the mechanism. That is what I said is collective management societies.
Doctor, do you think that it's that even though we have associations for musicians and composers and all of that, they are too primitive, or is it that lack of information, or togetherness that's lacking in the system, that needs more information, or how to go about certain things? Especially as you mentioned, there's many avenues for them to actually use their music, many platforms to actually take it to the market, but only get paid in maybe only a very few out of the whole lot. So how do they, as musicians or composers for them better, or lyricists, how do they protect themselves from being exploited by certain interested parties in the society?
In answering very specifically, I would say that awareness among the artists should be enhanced or raised to a certain level, that they would not simply ignore the violations of their rights. And they need to also get together, because you need to have institutions. For example, societies. Like in other countries, you should have collective management societies to take care of your interests. In addition to that, you need to enforce your rights. Not let it go. You need to enforce. When you enforce, then at least those who violate your rights will be at least alerted. If you take action for the first time, then the violators might think twice. They would think twice. Oh, if I do this, I will be brought to court. I would be brought to books. So that is the sentiment that we have to look at. I think they need to also be aware of, as a nation, this country should be given adequate understanding of the intellectual property rights. It is a set of rights, not like lands, buildings, but the most valuable set of rights are totally, in some cases, ignored in this country. So if you are an artist, then what you can do is you need to be aware of your rights, know your rights. You have set of exclusive rights. You can exclude anybody else from the use of your work, and for that you have an instrument in your hand called licensing agreements. If you want, you can also assign your rights for financial benefits. You can license, and there can be different instrument of exploitation. Contract. An artist should think of contractual arrangement. Contractual arrangement will give you benefit out of your creative work. I think that aspect needs more careful attention by the artist, because as I mentioned to you at the very outset also, that awareness of their rights and enforcement of your right would bring you would take you to that position, that level of implementation, because having laws in the book would not eventually bring you any tangible benefit.
Absolutely. And from that, Doctor, I'd like to move on to patenting, something that we have seen emerge out of nowhere through 2020, thanks to, in a way, I would say, blessing in disguise with COVID-19 pandemic, because people looked at different ways of going into the market and making sure that their product is sold, or for that matter, making sure that certain platforms take up their products. So how do people actually get their products patented, if it actually has the opportunity of getting it?
Eshan, once again, it is a marvelous question, because in the new normal triggered by COVID-19, the country has witnessed a wave of innovation in response to the COVID needs. So we have seen creating new robots, and in some countries driverless vehicle technology, self-disinfecting driverless vehicle to deliver supplies to different locations. So even in Sri Lanka, even if you design a new face mask, that would be, if it is an innovative solution to this issue, So, of course, you can protect it, because rights are important, because otherwise there would be no adequate incentives, motivations, encouragement. So, the basic underpinning, the basic underlying rationale, or I would say the thinking behind the patent law is that the inventor will be rewarded through by granting an exclusive right, that is called patents. Patents is a set of rights, exclusive rights given by the government for an inventor for a limited period of time, 20 years. So, patents are granted for an invention. What is an invention? Invention is a solution to a specific problem in the field of technology. Now, we do not have a solution to COVID-19 pandemic. So, if you find a new cure, new vaccine, new tablet to significantly reduce the risk of COVID-19, so then you have a good chance, you stand a good chance to obtain an exclusive right called patents. Because now during this COVID period, I have heard about, I have invented this, I have obtained patent. Of course, that is not an easy task to obtain a patent. That it is not that easy. Of course, you need to follow the law, follow the procedure laid down in the law, and also you need to approach the institutions set up, established for granting patent rights.
All right, Doctor. I think people out there probably would have taken definitely a point or two out of what we have discussed this evening with regards to intellectual property, because I think it's very important going into 2021 with all what we have seen right through 2020. There's lots of things that could change in this year for sure. So I think especially with regards to musicians, lyricists and composers, there's lots that they could do collectively. So hoping that they would come up with a solution for themselves, and looking at patenting going forward for whoever who comes out with something innovative, there is an avenue for you to protect your intellectual ideas. So hoping that that will be done as well. It's time for me to say goodbye on today's edition of Law and Order. See you same time, same place next week as well. It's bye-bye from me.